Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to Let's Have Renaissance, a podcast about writing, editing, publishing, literature, the arts, and more. I am Ito Utini.
And I'm Micaiah Utini, and today we're speaking with Susan Carlisle. After spending 20 years as an educator, Susan joined a writing group and started penning romance novels. She hasn't looked back since. She's now published dozens of books, many with Harlequin, an imprint of HarperCollins. We're excited to be with her today. First-time listeners, welcome. We're glad you're here. We're building a community of writers and artists from all walks of life, and since you're with us on this journey, we'd appreciate if you would like, comment, subscribe to the channel, and spread the word. If there's a topic you'd like us to cover, or a guest you want us to bring on, please let us know. And for more free resources, check out the Date Keepers blog at thedatekeepers.com/blog. Thank you.
Susan, thank you so much for joining us today. We're excited to have you. Can you please tell us about you and your work?
I'm Susan Carlisle, but I'm also Susan May, and I'm an author, and I have been an author for the past 14 years. I decided to go to write when my children started to be college age, and all they could tell me was how they didn't like the meals that I had prepared. So I quit cooking for them and started writing, and have been very happy ever since. I have almost 50 books. I primarily write romance for Harlequin, but I also write romances that I self-publish, and I have a number of nonfiction books as well. I do have a cookbook that's going to come out that has to do with afternoon tea that will be coming out in the early part of the year. I'm actually reworking it and had given it as gifts, and now I'm going to actually publish it for the public. Over the years, I have gathered up some very, very good recipes. So I have compiled that with pictures of my family having afternoon tea all over the world.
What type of tea?
Afternoon tea, like English tea, making scones, having cucumber sandwiches. I don't know if you realize it, but there's a real art to making cucumber sandwiches that are not soggy and are not too salty. And I have a real good recipe for that. And also canapes that have shrimp on them. And then various little sweets that are really, really nice. The only thing that I don't do in the sweet department is I swore off the tiny little cakes. I made them one time, iced them, and I had icing pooling in the floor of my kitchen. So I decided I would come out better if I just go buy those.
Yeah, I love that you're just like, oh yeah, canapes, scones, but it's the cucumber sandwiches that are really challenging.
Yeah, they are, because if you don't do them right, they get soggy. So the real secret to them is to actually shred your cucumber and then squeeze all the water you can out of them. Put them in a strainer and then squish them down and get them good so that all you have is the cucumber taste left. Then put it in the cream cheese, and then you don't have to worry about having the bread soggy, and you can make them more than 30 seconds before they go to the table. Yeah.
Do you do the thing where you cut off the tip of the cucumber and then you rub it with a paper towel to get the bitterness out?
No, I haven't ever done that. Now I cut off the tip end, yes, but I haven't ever rubbed them with a paper towel. And I've never heard that before. I need to give that one some thought.
I don't cook too much with cucumbers. It's just not an ingredient I use a whole lot, but I've seen it and I keep wanting to ask someone who's done it, is this real or is this just one of those internet fads? Does it really make a difference?
To my knowledge, it doesn't make a difference. I've grown cucumbers all my life. I've pickled cucumbers. I've done about anything you can do with a cucumber, and I have never purposely rubbed it on the end to get any kind of bitterness out. So
Okay.
I would have to go a hard no on that one. So anyway.
All right. The cucumber expert has spoken.
No, don't spread that rumor now.
I am curious, is that traditional or is it just what you and your family?
Well, now that's a traditional English part of afternoon tea is to have cucumber sandwiches, but I'll also add I live in the South, so cucumbers are a plentiful thing in the summertime. My daughter loves cucumber sandwiches year round, so that's something that's easy to come by. It also makes a really pretty plate with that green, and you can cut your cucumber really thin and garnish with it and make it sit up and be kind of lacy. And so there's a lot of options with cucumbers.
Cool. Duly noted. As much as I love talking about cucumbers, I want to save some time for also talking about writing. So can you tell us a little bit about your writing journey and how you first figured out that you wanted to be a writer, and just take us back to the beginning?
I made a bad grade when I was in the 6th grade in math. I still don't care for math other than I like for my bank account to be on the positive side instead of the negative. But I started reading, found the love of reading, and I read a lot of romances growing up, except for when I was supposed to be studying in college, and sometimes I read them then too. So when my youngest son was born with a bad heart and had to have a heart transplant. So I said, his story needs to be told. And for years, and I'm talking about 15 or 20 years, I messed with writing his story. My oldest one had just started college, and a friend of mine said, they've got a critique group for people that want to be writers here in town. You need to think about going. I was one of those that talked my story to death and never did do it, And so I went and joined the critique group here in town. I wrote my first book was about my son who's had the heart transplant. And I had read romance, like I said, all my life. My mother had said one time, she said, you read enough of those. You need to write one. And I thought, well, I'm going to try because I thought I was going, if I even got through one book, I would be amazed. That would be it. But I fell in love with writing then, and I wasn't quite 50, but I was real close when my first book came out. And then in 2011, my first romance came out, and Harlequin signed me for 2 books. And I went, oh my goodness, what have I done? I wrote the book I knew because it was about a little boy who needed a heart transplant. What am I going to do for a second book? I had some friends who had been missionaries in Ghana, West Africa, and they worked in a hospital. And I knew about kind of their world. So that was my second book. And I am currently writing my 39th. I just took off and kept going and kept going. Between my fiction and my nonfiction, I have almost 50 books.
Wow, congrats.
Congrats.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we're happy for you.
So in your opinion, and also in the opinion of the market, what makes a good romance novel?
It's not a romance novel unless it's a happily ever after. A lot of people think that Nicholas Sparks' books are romances. They're not. They're sad at the end. Romance novels always leave you with a good feeling and a positive, and you think, these people are going to make it despite any odds that come their way. They've found true love. It's that aha moment, those endorphins that when you close that book, you think, man, I wished I had some more of this. Or you think, these are people that are just going to be happy. And in this world nowadays, we need happiness,
I agree.
I'm in the feel-good business and the entertainment business and want people to feel better about themselves and about life in general. And I know that sounds horribly lofty. It does to me, but it's the truth. Yeah, truly.
I'm curious because you said you have a writing group. Can you talk about your community in your town? What groups are you part of and what do you guys do?
Well, mine started, I was in a critique group and up until COVID and it pretty much fizzled out, but it became my world. Every Tuesday night, we would go and stay 2 and 3 and 4 hours going through people's work. And it was truly what propelled me because, I was wasting my time if I didn't take some of my own work in to be read each week. And some weeks we didn't have time to read mine. We took turns. It wasn't. I don't want to imply it was all about me, but I was probably the most prolific and the most determined. But each person that came to that critique group brought their own expertise. And even if they were not personally writing romance, they had an angle or a thought to my work. Particularly, I would bring the first chapter and I'd say, do you like, this character? That would be one of my questions. And inevitably, they always liked the women, but the men, I always made them a little harsher than they wanted them to be. And so I would have to, tame them. But, there was one man who was particularly good with grammar and particularly good with history. And these were people from all different walks of life that if it hadn't have been for my writing, I would have never met them. They would never have entered my circle, but they gave me a career. I can't say that I went into writing saying, oh, I'm going to write 50 books or I'm going to have a career doing this. And because of them, it helped create one. And I really would encourage anybody that was starting out with writing that they find a critique group. If they can't find one in person, that at least find somebody that you kind of gel with online and that you actually work with on a regular basis. Now, I'm also a member of the Georgia Romance Writers. I have been a member in the past of the Romance Writers of America. I attend conferences regularly because, you got to keep learning all the time. Some things change and publishing has really changed in the last 10 years or so since I started.
Can you talk about how you've ridden those waves and what
Oh.
changes do you see coming in the future?
The one thing about publishing is that you can guarantee is what you think it's going to be today, it may not be tomorrow. It's like the stock market. You just don't know what the answer is going to be. When I look back at some of my favorite authors, the things they get away with explaining and talking about the room, how the room is decorated, or go on and on about what the character looks like. Listen, we live in a fast world nowadays. You got to get it down and you got to say it in 2 or 3 words, not use a lot of adverbs, wide words. Also having very active verbs wherever possible. All of those things have kind of morphed over the years. One of my favorite is Catherine Woodward's, and we're talking about late 70s, early 80s or so for her. So we're talking about way back. I was reading one of her older books, and she went on for about half of a book, and they never left the hallway of the manor house. She described the dogs, the cats, the man's boots, the door of the house, everything. We do not have the patience nowadays, readers don't, for that type of writing. It needs to be in a book, but it needs to be judiciously spread within the conversation instead of saying, he leaned up against the decorative oak wood door. It needs to be, he just leaned up against the wooden door and give you a sense of what it's about instead of a lot of detail about how it was made and all of that sort of stuff. But other things that have changed is we had the 50 Shades of Grey where people were really looking for the erotic stuff. And now the wave has gone up and is still up, I guess. More people are, at least in the romance world, are interested in the sweet hometown romances. I don't write either one of those. I write right in the middle, and a lot of people will follow a trend, but I don't think in the long run that serves you well. I think you have to be true to yourself. I write what I like to read, and I'm afraid that my books would not be very good if I forced myself to write what I don't like to read.
And who are some of your other favorite authors?
I'm a big fan of Linda Howard. I don't reread many books, but I do reread my Catherine Woodwiss's and my Linda Howard's. One of the other hot things right now are sports books. Tracy Solheim writes sports romances, and I think they're particularly good if you are interested in small town, sweet romance, and nowadays dogs are hot. You can put a dog on the front of a book and sell bukus of them. But Sierra Knight, I couldn't say enough about Sierra, and she is like serious quality writing. And if you want to do it right, she's one to follow. Lucy Score, I believe it's Score, if that's right, her right name. Her books are really good. I've been reading some of hers lately. And those are the ones I can come up with off the top of my head.
Do you write every day now since you're a full-time writer, or do you have a certain time of day or week?
I write every day. I've been pretty bad the last year. I had a brain aneurysm in February and it spent 41 days in ICU. So I kind of am creeping back into my writing. I am working on a book. When all is going well, I generally write something or do something with the book every single day. When it gets close to the deadline, I am sleeping it, breathing it, living it, doing everything. I mean, it's one of those things that you have to spend 2 days after you get done cleaning a house because you hadn't done it in 3 or 4 weeks. Kind of intense writing. I'm pretty consistent. I consider it work, and I have to go to my job.
We're so glad to hear you are recovering.
Yeah.
I am. I'm doing really well. Everybody was concerned that I wasn't going to be able to write. And, I'm in the hospital. I can't even stay awake. And I said, somebody needs to bring me my laptop. My son-in-law came to the house and got it,
Can you talk about what writing is for you in addition to typing on a laptop? Because that's what comes to mind for a lot of people. Writing is just the act of inscription. But what else is there in the writing process for you?
I hate to admit it, but it's marketing. Nowadays, actually being seen, being heard, being spoken to is something that the fans like. They like to interact with the authors. I think they always have, but it's easier for them to do it now than it was, eons ago. But with that, you've got to think about your social media. I have a newsletter. I give away books every month to a winner, at least one winner. And this past month, I was really feeling benevolent, and everybody that emailed me and answered the question I'd asked in my newsletter got a book. You've got to, package those up, mail those off, and autograph them, which I happen to enjoy the autographing part. So you've got to stay organized. You've got to think about whether or not the conference that you would like to go to, is it going to be worthwhile financially? Occasionally I'm asked to give a little snippet or whatever so that people can use it on their books and a little blurb. And I don't blurb unless I've read the book and I can say something honest, because that's my name on their book too, All of that requires, time and effort. I'll also add that when I started this, I promised myself, since reading was my first love, that I would give up writing if I ever found myself reading less because of the writing. And I'm proud to say in all these years, I probably read more now than I ever read in my life, and certainly read more broadly.
Speaking of reading, we always ask guests to read some of their work. Do you have anything you would like to share?
I do. This is From Racing to You. It's about a hot air balloon race. This is the first chapter. Coast to coast hot air balloon race, 3 days before the race. Location, Barstow, California. No one should have to stoop to asking a loathsome man for a favor, yet Emily Carr was desperate. She paused at the double glass doors and smoothed a damp palm down her blue blazer for the umpteenth time. This was her last-ditch effort. 3 days from now, she'd be out of time and out of the race. She might despise Reed Martin, but she had no other choice. Her ex-boyfriend had blackballed her with every other possible sponsor in town. The only reason she didn't think he approached Engineered Materials in Barstow, California, was because he knew how she felt about the company and its owner. Despite her desperation, it still went against her grain to humble herself to Reed Martin, but she would. She must convince him to help. Her chance to prove herself, her livelihood, and her future rode on this meeting. It hadn't taken but her first fight for her to fall in love with ballooning. The freedom, the romance, the serenity of being in the sky calmed her heart. She loved the idea of sharing her enthusiasm for hot air ballooning with others. That's why she wanted to start her own ballooning business. Now was the time. A piece of land had become available that would be perfect for landing and taking off. She could use it as well as lease it out to other balloonists in the area. As her business grew, she would hire more balloonists. She saw the sky as the limit, but she had to have the prize money from the balloon race to make that happen. It all depended on securing a sponsor. Emily took a deep breath and let it out a bit by bit to settle her nerves. She couldn't let her prepared speech sound as frantic as she felt. Securing the folder with support papers under her arm, Emily entered the simple warehouse-style building. No one sat behind the reception desk in the small area, but a door stood ajar just beyond. Stepping to it, she tapped. A tall man with a tech pad in his hand looked up from where he stood behind an oak desk that dominated the room. "Mr. Martin?" Her eyes widened, mouth went dry. No way could this be the same Reed Martin who had fired her father. This man was more than 34 or 35 years old, movie star gorgeous. She couldn't help but stare, tall, athletic looking, with thick hair and bedroom eyes. He wasn't anything she had expected. If she'd met him at a bar, she would have flirted with him. If he had been the one to let her father go, he must have been fresh out of college. Her father had said the company had been around for a long time, and so she assumed the owner would be much older. She had to forget about the tingle descending her spine and her skin flushing over the guy. He had destroyed her father. Still, the temptation to tell Mr. Martin what she thought about what he had done to her family was strong, but she wouldn't. She needed him on her side. Maybe later. The man's well-shaped brows rose in question. "Yes, I'm Reed Martin." His eyes were a vivid blue, like a clear summer's day, made brighter by the warm tan of his skin. Coupled with his trim, muscular stature, he must spend a great deal of time outside. If she hadn't been so disgusted by the idea that she had to ask for his help, she might act on her attraction. But right now, she needed to focus. "Miss, he glanced down at his desk. "Carr." "Yes." He dropped the papers on the desk, stretched his arm across the file-strewn area, and offered his hand. "Nice to meet you."
Thank you.
Thank you so much. This has been fun. Thanks for making the time.
Well, thank you, y'all. I appreciate y'all having me on, and if I can ever do anything to help you, holler at me, okay? Y'all are doing a great thing to encourage reading and books. I appreciate it.
We're happy to do it.